What you wrote is not just a confession. It's a threshold moment. It's the exact point where a person stops asking, will they still love me if they know? And starts asking, can I live with myself if I never let them know? That shift changes everything. There's something deeply human in what you're describing, the fear that being fully seen will somehow reduce your value. That if someone looks closely enough, they'll find the unfinished edges, the self-doubt, the old mistakes, the fragile parts that still ache at 3 a.m. And instead of leaning in, they'll lean away. But here's the truth most people discover too late. The version of you that is polished enough to avoid rejection is also too edited to experience real intimacy. You're right about the threshold. Almost every relationship hovers there, close enough to feel connected, safe enough to function, but not raw enough to transform either person. That line between almost known and fully seen is terrifying because crossing it removes control. Once you speak, you can't manage perception anymore. You can't curate. You can't test the waters. You just stand there, exposed, and exposure feels like danger to a nervous system trained by past hurt. What you're describing isn't weakness. It's attachment fear mixed with self-worth wounds. When you say you've been protecting the version of yourself you thought they needed, that's survival strategy. Somewhere along the way, you learned that love is conditional. That to keep someone, you must perform stability, confidence, certainty. But intimacy doesn't grow from performance. It grows from congruence. The irony is brutal. The very thing you fear will drive someone away, your uncertainty, your doubt, your scars, is the exact material that allows real bonding. Because when one person speaks honestly about their fragility, it signals safety for the other to do the same. That's how depth forms, not through perfection, through mutual exposure. You're also right about something profound. The transformation happens when you speak, not when they respond. That's the part people miss. Whether they stay or leave, something inside you reorganizes the moment you choose honesty over protection. You stop splitting yourself into acceptable and too much. You integrate. You become whole in your own eyes first. And that kind of internal alignment is powerful. It's also uncomfortable. After confession, there's often a wave of second guessing. Did I say too much? Did I make it heavier? Did I sound insecure? Did I just ruin something good? That's the ego scrambling to regain control. But growth rarely feels calm in the beginning. It feels like standing without armor and resisting the urge to reach for it again. You asked a silent question beneath everything you wrote. What if they see me and decide I'm not enough? Here's the counter question. What if they see you and feel closer than ever because you trusted them with something real? You can't engineer which outcome happens. That's the risk. But you already identified the greater cost, being almost loved for years. And almost is a lonely place. There's another layer here too. Sometimes when we finally speak our fear of losing someone, we realize the fear wasn't entirely about them. It was about old abandonment, old rejection, old moments where being vulnerable didn't go well. The present relationship becomes the stage where old wounds replay. That doesn't make your fear irrational. It makes it understandable. But it also means the courage you're showing now isn't just about this relationship. It's about breaking a lifelong pattern of emotional self-protection. You're dismantling the belief that the independence equals strength. There's a moment before you speak the truth when time slows down. When your chest feels tight and your mind offers you one last escape route. Don't say it. Keep it light. Change the subject. Smile. Laugh. Survive the moment. I've taken that exit so many times I could draw you a map of it. I know exactly how to pivot away from vulnerability, how to soften the weight of a real confession with humor, how to turn intensity into something manageable. I've been managing my emotions my whole life. What I haven't been doing is sharing them. There's a room inside me I built carefully, not out of malice, not out of deceit, out of fear. Fear that if someone saw the unedited version of me, the doubts that loop at night, the old mistakes that still sting, the insecurity that whispers, I'm one step away from being replaced, they would slowly start to love me less. So I curated, I refined, I showed you my competence, my warmth, my stability. I gave you the version of me that feels safe to keep. And the terrifying part is, it worked. You stayed. You loved me. You built something with me. And instead of feeling secure, I felt the pressure rise. Because now there was something to lose. Now the stakes were higher. Now the question wasn't, will someone choose me? It was, will they still choose me if they know everything? That question has lived quietly in my body for years. We talk a lot about vulnerability, like it's poetic, like it's soft lighting and deep conversations and tears that bring two people closer. But real vulnerability doesn't feel poetic. It feels like exposure. It feels like standing under bright lights without armor. It feels like handing someone a fragile object and trusting they won't drop it. And I have never trusted easily. Somewhere along the way, I learned that love is conditional, that affection can shift, that closeness can evaporate if you're not careful. So I became careful. I became self-aware in a way that bordered on self-editing. I monitored my reactions. I filtered my fears. I made sure my pain never felt too heavy for someone else to carry. I convinced myself that this was maturity, that sparing someone from my internal chaos was kindness. But withholding isn't kindness. It's distance in disguise. Every time I held something back, I created a gap. Not big enough to break us. Just big enough to keep me from ever feeling completely known. And that gap grew quietly. Because when you're loved for the parts you show, but not the parts you hide, a strange loneliness forms. You sit next to someone who cares about you deeply, and yet a part of you whispers, if they knew everything, this might be different. That whisper is exhausting. It makes every argument feel riskier, every silence heavier, every shift in tone feel like evidence that you're about to be discovered and discarded. So you overcompensate. You become better, kinder, more available, more accommodating. You try to earn permanence. You treat love like a contract you have to keep renewing with performance. I didn't realize I was doing this until I caught myself rehearsing vulnerability instead of living it. I would think about what I might say if I were brave. I'd imagine telling you that sometimes I feel like I'm not enough, that sometimes I worry you'll wake up and realize you could do better, that I still carry guilt from past relationships where I didn't show up the way I should have, that I'm afraid I'll repeat patterns I'm still unlearning. But I didn't say those things. Instead, I joked. I changed the subject. I reassured you when you were insecure, but avoided asking for reassurance when I was. I stayed strong, steady, reliable, and quietly afraid. What no one tells you is that the strongest looking person in the room is often the most terrified of being seen without that strength. I built an identity around being independent, around not needing too much, around being emotionally self-sufficient. I admired people who could walk away untouched. I believed that if I could master that kind of detachment, I would never be hurt again. But detachment doesn't prevent pain. It prevents depth. You can build something functional from safety. You can build routine. partnership, stability. But you can't build true intimacy without risk. And I started to feel the ceiling of what we had, not because it was lacking, but because I was holding it back from becoming more. There is a level of closeness that only happens when someone sees your fear and doesn't step back. I wanted that with you. I just didn't know how to ask for it without risking everything. The fear of losing you wasn't loud. It was subtle. It showed up in small ways. In the way I'd analyze your tone. In the way I'd assume distance meant dissatisfaction. In the way I'd prepare myself emotionally for abandonment that wasn't even happening. I was protecting myself from a loss that existed mostly in my imagination. And in doing that, I created the very distance I feared. Because when you don't let someone see your vulnerability, they can't respond to it. They can't reassure what they don't know exists. They can't hold what you refuse to hand them. I used to believe that I needed to eliminate my insecurities before I deserved deep love. That I needed to fix myself completely first. But healing doesn't happen in isolation. It happens in safe connection. It happens when someone witnesses your fear and doesn't weaponize it. When they see your scars and don't treat them like flaws. The first time I almost told you everything, my heart was pounding so hard, I thought you could hear it. The words sat at the back of my throat. I wanted to say, I'm scared you'll leave when you see how imperfect I am. But instead I said, I'm just tired. That's the thing about fear. It disguises itself. It hides inside practical statements. It translates itself into safer language. But safe language never builds profound intimacy. One night, I asked myself a question that changed everything. If they love you as you are right now, why are you still pretending to be more? The answer hurt. Because I wasn't pretending to be more for you. I was pretending for the younger version of myself who learned that being too much or not enough led to disconnection. I was performing safety, and you were loving me in good faith, unaware that you weren't seeing the full picture. That realization broke something open in me. I don't want to be almost known anymore. Almost known means constantly monitoring yourself. It means celebrating closeness while secretly guarding parts of your heart. It means feeling gratitude for love while fearing exposure. I'm tired of fearing exposure. So here is what I've been carrying. I am afraid that my past mistakes make me harder to love. I am afraid that my tendency to overthink will exhaust you. I am afraid that when I go quiet, you'll interpret it as withdrawal instead of processing. I am afraid that one day you'll see the depth of my self-doubt and decide you don't want to spend your life reassuring someone who should already feel secure. I am afraid that love requires a version of me I'm still becoming. And beneath all of that, I want you. Not the curated you. The real you. I want the messy conversations. The moments where we don't have polished answers. I want the kind of relationship where saying, I'm scared, doesn't feel like a liability. Because here's what I've learned. Avoiding vulnerability doesn't protect love. It limits it. There's a strange freedom that comes after confession. Not immediate relief. Not instant peace. But clarity. The truth sits between you unedited. And you realize that whatever happens next will be built on something real. I can't control your response. I can't guarantee permanence. I can't engineer security. But I can choose honesty. And honesty is the only foundation that doesn't crack under pressure. If you stay after seeing all of me, the connection deepens in a way that can't be replicated through performance. And if you don't, at least I'll know I wasn't loved conditionally based on a partial truth. The cost of vulnerability is discomfort. Sometimes rejection. sometimes misunderstanding. The cost of avoidance is a lifetime of being almost loved. I don't want almost. I want to sit across from you and feel nothing tightening in my chest because there's nothing left unsaid. I want to argue without fearing exposure. I want to celebrate without wondering if I'm being fully seen. I want to wake up next to you and know that you love the person who exists beyond competence and composure. I am still afraid. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's movement despite it. So this is me moving. This is me unlocking the door and letting you see the room I've kept hidden. It isn't dramatic. It isn't catastrophic. It's human. It's doubt and hope existing at the same time. It's strength and insecurity sharing the same body. It's me, fully here, fully uncertain, fully willing to risk depth over safety. If we build something from this place, it will be real. Not perfect, not guaranteed, but real. And I think real is worth the risk. There's a version of me you met first, the capable one, the steady one, the one who knows how to hold eye contact and speak with certainty, the one who laughs easily, listens deeply, shows up on time, says the right things at the right moments. That version of me isn't fake. It's just incomplete. And for a long time, incomplete felt safer than exposed. I didn't realize how much of myself I was rationing until I started noticing the pauses, the slight hesitation before answering certain questions, the careful wording when conversations drifted toward insecurity, the instinct to redirect when you looked at me a little too closely and asked, "What's really going on?" What was really going on was this: I was afraid that if I stopped being impressive, I would stop being loved. It sounds dramatic when I say it out loud, but fear rarely announces itself in dramatic ways. It shows up in subtle edits, in strategic silence, in being fine when you're anything but. It shows up in becoming the strong one so no one looks for your weakness. I became fluent in strength. I learned how to handle my own sadness before it inconvenienced anyone else. I learned how to turn jealousy into jokes, how to turn fear into logic, how to turn insecurity into self-improvement. If something inside me felt fragile, I fixed it quietly before anyone could see it crack. And people praised me for it. "You're so grounded. You're so emotionally mature. You never overreact." They didn't know how much effort that cost. What they didn't see was the internal negotiations. The nights I replayed conversations, searching for signs that I had said too much or not enough. The way I braced myself when you went quiet, assuming distance meant dissatisfaction. The way I prepared emotionally for endings that weren't happening. I wasn't protecting us. I was protecting myself from a future I had already imagined. Because somewhere in my past, vulnerability didn't go well. Maybe it was subtle. Maybe it was loud. Maybe it was just a slow realization that being fully open didn't guarantee safety. Whatever it was, it taught me to be careful. Careful with my needs, careful with my fears, careful with how much I revealed. So when we started building something real, I promised myself I wouldn't sabotage it with insecurity. I wouldn't be too much. I wouldn't bring old wounds into new love. But wounds don't disappear because you ignore them. They just go underground. And underground fears are powerful. They whisper instead of shout. They say things like, "Don't tell them you're scared. They'll think you're unstable." Or, "Don't admit you need reassurance. You'll seem needy." Or, "If they see how deeply you feel, they'll realize you care more than they do." So I stayed measured, balanced, composed. And slowly, I started to feel the distance between who I am and who I was allowing you to know. It's strange to feel lonely next to someone who loves you. But that's what happens when parts of you are hidden. You're not lonely because they're absent. You're lonely because you're partially present. There's a difference. You can share routines and laughter and dreams and still withhold the one thing that would make it transformative, your raw interior world. The thoughts you think at 2 a.m. The fears you don't want to admit even to yourself. The memories that still shape your reactions. I've been afraid of what would happen if I let you see that interior world unfiltered. Not because it's ugly, but because it's vulnerable. There are days I feel strong and secure and certain about us. And there are days I feel like I'm one misstep away from losing everything. There are moments I trust completely, and moments I question whether I deserve what we're building. I don't always understand where the doubt comes from. It isn't about you. It's about the part of me that still believes love can disappear without warning. The part that learned to anticipate abandonment so it wouldn't be blindsided. So instead of saying, "I'm scared you'll leave," I say nothing. Instead of asking, "Do you still choose me?" I assume you do and hope my silence doesn't create confusion. Instead of admitting, "Sometimes I don't feel like enough," I work harder to appear like I am. But appearing enough and feeling enough are not the same thing, and I'm tired of performing adequacy. I want to be known in my uncertainty. I want to say, "I don't have this all figured out," without feeling like I'm risking everything. I want to stop filtering my emotions through the question, "Will this make me less lovable?" Because here's what I've realized, if love depends on me hiding my humanity, it isn't love I can sustain. Real intimacy isn't built on how impressive you are. It's built on how honest you're willing to be. And honesty doesn't always look strong. Sometimes it looks like admitting you're jealous, or insecure, or afraid. Sometimes it looks like saying, "I need reassurance," instead of pretending you don't. I used to believe that needing reassurance was weakness. That confidence meant never doubting your place in someone's life. But confidence isn't the absence of doubt. It's the willingness to speak it. There's a moment right before vulnerability where your mind tries to protect you. It lists all the possible outcomes. They might see you differently. They might feel overwhelmed. They might pull back. But it rarely lists the other possibility: they might come closer. They might feel honored that you trusted them with something fragile. They might recognize their own hidden fears in yours. They might respond with softness instead of judgment. I've been bracing for rejection without giving you the chance to offer understanding. That's not fair to either of us. I don't want to build a relationship on assumption. I don't want to keep guessing whether you'd stay if you saw all of me. I want to know, not by testing you in subtle ways, not by pulling back to see if you chase, but by telling the truth and letting you respond. The truth is simple and complicated at the same time. I am still healing. I am still unlearning old patterns. I am still figuring out how to trust without contingency plans. I am still afraid sometimes, and I want you anyway. Not because I need you to fix me, not because I expect you to carry my insecurities, but because I believe love is the place where healing accelerates, where honesty becomes a bridge instead of a threat. There's something powerful about standing in front of someone and saying, "This is the part of me I usually hide." It shifts the dynamic. It replaces strategy with sincerity. It removes the quiet power struggle of who cares more. Because that's another thing we rarely admit: we're afraid of caring more. Afraid of being the one who is more invested, more attached, more vulnerable. So we downplay, we pretend, we match energy instead of expressing truth. But love isn't a negotiation. It's a risk. And I'm done trying to minimize my heart to feel safe. If I'm scared, I want to say I'm scared. If I need reassurance, I want to ask. If I feel uncertain, I want to explore it with you instead of alone, because the alternative is a slow erosion of closeness. A polite, functional, emotionally muted version of connection that never quite reaches its full depth. I don't want muted love. I want the kind that feels steady not because it's perfect, but because it's honest. I don't expect you to solve my fears. I don't expect you to respond perfectly every time. I just want to remove the armor, to stop pretending that strength means silence. The strongest thing I can do right now is let you see the places I still wobble. There's a risk in that. There always will be. You might see something you don't know how to hold. You might feel pressure. You might need time to understand. But there's also a possibility that this becomes the moment everything deepens. The moment where we stop skimming the surface and start building something rooted. I would rather be rejected for who I am than accepted for who I pretend to be. I would rather risk loss than live in partial visibility. So this is me choosing visibility, choosing to say that sometimes I feel small. Sometimes I feel uncertain. Sometimes I'm terrified that the very act of admitting this could change how you see me. But I'm saying it anyway, because if we're going to build something that lasts, it can't be built on edited truths. It has to be built on the whole story, the confidence and the doubt, the strength and the fear, the certainty and the questions. This is my whole story, not polished, not perfectly resolved, still unfolding. And I'm offering it to you not as a burden, but as an invitation. An invitation to step closer instead of away. An invitation to build something real instead of something safe. An invitation to know me fully and let yourself be fully known too. If we're going to do this, let's do it without walls. Let's do it honest.